This video has 9 more mechs in it, done almost the same way as the first video. However, there are some variations, and I thought that it would be a good idea to show these variations. And of course, this is sped up 4 times, so it's not going to be at the same speed as before. Again, each one of these is taking me about maybe 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, some of them a little bit longer, but not more than 20 minutes each. And again, I thought it would be a good idea to include these because I do use some new techniques in some of them, and you might find that useful. And also maybe the repetition will help you kind of get an idea of what I'm doing in a better way, and help you maybe learn some techniques that you can use in your projects. So here, pretty much so far in this video, I'm doing the same exact things using the cube, adding and subtracting, sticking to some of the design choices or design requirements that I put forth, and that being that this vehicle is going to hold about 10 people, and the driver is going to be sitting in the front and the navigator, and it's going to have some sort of an armament on a big kind of secondary floor or shelf behind it, or I'm sorry, on top of it. And so I'm sticking to those design choices, sticking to the choice that there is a hatch in the back. But other than that, I'm just basically using the same things that I did before. So here I'm using the move tool to just kind of give it a little bit of a different shape. And again, very similar to what I did before, but trying out some new things, back to adding and subtracting with a cube. And pretty soon I will start using a different technique, which is using stamps. So stamps are just parts that come with Medium, and there's quite a few mechanical ones in there. This one's kind of a flat rectangle with a corner cut out, and it's pretty useful. And again, it can be used in both negative and positive space, so I can erase with it as well as add that shape. And I think in one of the videos I used this extensively to add more flatter shapes for the legs and some of the parts. So here I went back to the pill, which is kind of a more of a standard shape, and kind of setting up the basis for the legs. And again, going through the different stamps that are there. And note that the stamps are not just on one page. If you scroll down, there's quite a few in there. Of course, you can also make your own stamps, either with the things that you create in Medium or by importing OBJ files. So it's a pretty straightforward process. I still have to make my own stamps in here. I use the ones that are in there. But one more thing to note here is that I don't tend to use the stamps as they are. I always modify them a little bit. Here I turned off symmetry to create an asymmetrical kind of dome on the top. And went back to symmetry, chose a different stamp, and notice here I can also add and subtract to those stamps as well to create a completely different shape than what that stamp is. So it's useful to use those stamps for what they are for, but you can also use those stamps to add and erase, just like I did with the cube, to get some interesting shapes. And sometimes you get some shapes you didn't think of, get some happy accidents. So it is kind of a useful thing to use. And here I'm just basically experimenting with some different shapes and adding them, and sometimes even subtracting with them. Back to the trusty old cube here. Kind of creating a magazine for the gun. And again, just getting some useful angles. And yeah, so again, that asymmetrical piece kind of added some cool kind of radar or some sort of sensor kind of aspect to the shape. It's always good to kind of maybe introduce some asymmetry into your design. And so here I'm just basically again using stamps to figure out different shapes for the legs. So just basically some cylindrical shape with some little cutout parts. Again, just pretty much the same thing. Here I'm choosing a longer one and just placing it down. Pretty standard to what I was doing before. Same thing here. And once I have these down, I am choosing a different shape for maybe the feet. And as soon as I'm done putting these in, I will go ahead and start adding and subtracting to them with the cube again. So they don't look anything like the shapes that they were. And with the move tool, you can even add a little bit of a twist and bend to them, so they kind of completely morph into something of your design versus being what they initially were. And don't be afraid to experiment with these. Here I'm kind of done, I guess, with using the different stamps, and I'm just going back to the cube. And notice here that you might see some tertiary forms, but all of them are accidental. I'm just basically going for primary and secondary forms and nothing else. So some of the chatter that the cube introduces creates some interesting kind of eye-catching tertiary forms, but I try not to spend any time on those and just focus on the main shape. So this one's pretty much almost done. Again, 10 or 15 minutes for this one, and soon as I'm done with this one, I'll start out with the next. And again, I try not to stay too long. I've got a timer that basically tells me I should stop. So after doing these claws, I will save this and be done with it and move on to the next one. Right off the bat, you can see me taking a little bit of a different approach on this one. So here I'm using the move tool to kind of establish volumes instead of adding them with the cube, but then I switch right back to the cube and continue doing what I did before, because it's just really convenient to do it that way. But sometimes it's also nice to use the move tool to just kind of push and pull the object like it was some Play-Doh or clay or something like that. Also, another thing you might have noticed right off the bat is that I chose a different color for this one. So I chose kind of a orangish yellow, kind of a color that we see more in construction equipment. But sometimes if you change the color, it gives you a little bit of a different perspective, a different approach to the object. So here, kind of contorting it a little bit more with the move tool and going back and forth between that and the cube, adding and subtracting volume. And another kind of a new approach that I used with this specific mech is that I used a stamp that I really like that comes with Medium, and we'll see it here in a few minutes. And it's that one right there, and I'll be pausing the video in a few minutes so you can get a better closer look at it. There it is in the bottom corner, and it's basically just a flat kind of cube with a corner cut out of it, and that really gives me a lot of different shapes to work with. And I work with that quite a bit on this model. So as you can see here, I'm using it in different ways, and I'm using it to chip different corners out of the model, and I'm also using it to kind of flatten some areas out, maybe adding some tertiary shapes that I don't really intend to add, but it adds kind of some visual interest, and it doesn't really take that long to do it. And also notice here that I am using that exclusively for the legs to just kind of get flatter designs on it. So there I'm just basically using it to create the legs themselves, and pretty soon I'll switch to the move brush to kind of extend them out. But here you can see that just using a different stamp, and I don't want to make it a kind of a stamp party and use the whole bunch of them, but just using a few different ones to sculpt with, sometimes you can find a new way of getting certain shapes that you would not have thought of getting otherwise. So here we go again. I'm just extending out the legs and adding a little bit more volume. And notice here that I'm also doing that kind of shelf on the back. And sometimes this doesn't work, like for adding volume, so you can kind of see a little bit of the chatter there. Sometimes on the outside part it adds a little bit of visual interest, but it also leaves a bunch of empty spots in the middle of the model, and sometimes that's not really desirable. So if I were to do this again, I'd probably use the cube to do that top part, and then just use this to kind of create some shapes. And you can notice here that I'm even using it to create the guns, and just kind of going in and creating a little bit of flat volume, and then erasing some of it, and it looked okay. I wasn't very happy with it, so I ended up using a tube stamp at some point to actually make the cannons or the guns of the mech. So here I'm trying to see what I can do if I can get it to work as just a standalone thing, but eventually I go to a different stamp set even and choose this tube shape and use the line again to create a kind of a barrel that I can add to the shape that I already have there. So I kept what was there, which was interesting to look at, but I also augmented it with the cube. And here I switch back to that same shape and start adding some more to the back of the gun. And starting to work more on the mech as well, and getting kind of a little bit of a different look. The color's really helping as well. And as you can see here, just choosing the shape gives me some new options and new looks that I wasn't able to get by just using the cube. So realistically, I basically mostly use the move brush and the cube. Sometimes I use the pill shape, and I use that specific stamp, and I think just with those I get pretty compelling shapes, and then I use other shapes as needed later on. So here again I'm seeing if any contortions could add some visual interest, and kind of doing the same thing here where I'm trying to add a bunch of volume with that flat shape, and it's not really the best one to do that with, so I would probably not do that in future times. But also even though I did do that there, it added some interesting shapes to the back. All right, so this one's pretty much almost done as well. Again, 10 to 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes at the longest one of these, and I have something really cool to kind of look at as one of the options, and also maybe use part of these in the final mech. Maybe the legs, because I really kind of like that shape and it creates a really interesting silhouette. Maybe the cannons, because I used a different approach with them. Maybe that top kind of part. So I don't know. Again, I could use this as one option as a whole, or I could use parts of it to make the final mech. All right, so this one's pretty much almost done, and we will soon move on to the next iteration or next mech. For this one, I ended up starting with a sphere instead of a cube. And I did that just because I thought it would be kind of an interesting experiment, and it actually turned out really good. And it turned out to be one of the ones I kept. So all in all, I think I did about 22, 23 of these, and 20 of them turned out really good, and those are the ones that we're going to see later on and use them. So here you can see that it's creating a really kind of a bulbous ball kind of bug-like thing. But as I also use the move tool, it's getting even more insect-like. So kind of I made mental notes that if I ever need to make an insect, this might be the way to go. And but at some point, I don't really want to create kind of an insect-like mech. I mean, it's already got 6 legs, so it already kind of has some insectoid type of qualities, and I want to get away from that. So at some point, really soon here, I will switch over to the cube again and start defining some surfaces. Now, another interesting thing about this one is that I ended up using the back as the front and the front as the back, because that worked out better. One thing I should also point out is that the kind of the sphere, along with what I'm doing here, which is kind of shaving off some surfaces, creates a very interesting look as well, as you saw on top a few minutes ago. So again, sometimes you stumble into some happy accidents. Here I'm kind of pulling some shapes out. It looked too insect-like, so I shaved them off. And again, the cube applied to these curved surfaces gives me some interesting shapes that I was not able to get before. So yeah, here I'm again going to some of the design principles or design requirements that I put together before I started making this mech. And switching back to the sphere here because that's kind of how I started, so I kind of want to stay true to that, and just creating some of the shapes that I think would stand out or maybe give this one a bit of a different look. So yeah, I'm getting a little bit of a different look with the addition of these spheres. I might completely demolish them at the end and kind of go back to what I wanted, but they're there in certain places, and they definitely add a different version or different variant to what I was working on. Again, the move tool is always good to pull shapes out and give volume to areas where I think they are needed. And as you can see, this one turned out to be a little bit shorter. I don't know if I'm going to be adding some to the back here. Probably will. And again, the chatter is adding some tertiary detail. That looks pretty interesting, but I might end up not keeping it, but it might give me some ideas when I'm getting more into the refinement stage. So here we go. This one is more than about halfway done, and I need to put that back part that carries the cannons or the guns. So I'm working on that now, and try to do that also with the sphere initially to add the bulk and see if that would add an interesting effect. So kind of using the same exact thing I did before, and let's see. I'm also doing something really interesting here with the legs where they're a little bit different than what I had before, and trying that out. So the good thing is when you do 20 of these, it kind of forces you to kind of bust out of your routine and try some new things. And I think this was one of the ones I did more towards the end, so I really wanted to try something new and different with it and not do the same thing that I did before. All right, so here I'm kind of creating the guns, and they also have a new interesting visual interest that I didn't have in the old one, and I'm adding a platform in the back as well. And just pushing and pulling again, and adding and subtracting with the cube, and getting kind of the shape that I want. I know there's a lot of horizontals and verticals on this one, so I might not end up using most of it, but there might be parts of it that I will end up using because they are interesting. So this one kind of has more crab-like arms in the front, and I'm liking that a lot, and I think I'm almost done with this one as well. So going in, adding some last-minute things, and soon we'll be moving on to the next iteration, next mech. All right, well, in this one, what I'm doing here is, first of all, I thought maybe adding another light or moving the light around would add more highlights or different lighting scheme, and I also chose a darker grayish blue color. And for this one, I think I'm using the similar approach of just using the cube to add the volume. And some of these might look the same to you, but they do have some variations. I am doing different things in each one, either by using a new approach or by choosing a different type of shape. So for example, for this one, I think I'm basically making the hull part a little bit bulkier. So I'm adding more bulk to it, and assuming that maybe the people would be sitting in stacked up, maybe there's a middle row that they will be sitting in, as well as the two sides, and maybe it has a little bit more armor as well. So those are all design choices that I think about while I'm working, and as I mentioned earlier, these are sped up, so I'm working at 4 times, or this is playing at 4 times the speed of me doing the work, but even at that I'm moving pretty fast and also moving around my model, not staying in the same place for a long time. And while I'm doing that, I'm always kind of considering what design choices are going to be different in the one variation that I'm working on now than the one I worked on before. So on this one, I decided to also add an area in the back where a gunner or a radar operator or something like that would sit. So I just made that design choice on this one, and you'll see it on some of them and not on others. So I think this was the first one where I did make that design choice. So here we go. I'm working on the shelf where the cannons are going to be, and I'm also working on that back part. Again, just basically using the cube. I've only used the cube so far, and possibly the move tool. Here I'm using the line to get the cannons to be aligned on a straight line, and then just adding volume for the cannons. And once I'm done with that, I'll just go in and start subtracting the shapes out to create something that has more visual interest. Again, the motion is really kind of fast here. I need to make these decisions pretty quickly as I'm working, and not spending too much time, because I know I've got 20 of these to choose from. So even if I make some horrible choices, that's fine. I could omit that specific part of that mech or re-edit it. Here I'm doing the legs for this one, and again, just a sphere works really good for the legs, specifically since I'm doing something that has multiple legs, 6 or 8 of them. I think this one's going to have 6 legs, and it's also going to have a couple of arms. So here we go, trying to get it situated correctly, and getting those arms to work. And it's kind of difficult not to create insect-like shapes, since the only things we're really familiar with that have multiple legs are insects or octopi, and things that basically are not quadrupedic or bipedal. And so here, kind of still chopping up the areas under the arms, figuring out how that's going to work. And again, none of these tertiary shapes are intentional. They're just accidentally happening. I think I had a couple of floating particles there I got rid of. And so here I'm kind of evaluating the mech itself and the overall silhouette, and deciding whether or not I want to do something different with these legs. Here maybe I'm going to use a different stamp. And I think this is the first one I used the stamp in. I think I've got another one that I use it in, which is this kind of base of a stick shift for a car, which has a cloth type look to it. And even though that's tertiary shape, I brought it in just to see if it would add something of a visual interest, and maybe give me some ideas for when I actually start working on the final version. So here we go, we're almost done with this one. I'm choosing to make the legs longer. I'm not really caring about the legs all hitting the ground, because again, I can do that later. I'm just worried about, at this point, just overall silhouette, overall shapes, and maybe some ideas of how I want this to appear. And I think I'm almost done with this one, and we're going to be moving on to the next one pretty soon. All right, so here is the next one. One of the things I've noticed is as I'm narrating these, I'm also talking fast because the videos sped up as well. So in this one, I think I have a little bit more resolution, and so you're going to see a little bit more choppiness on the actual cubes. And notice for this one, I also picked a very bright yellow. Thought I'd give that a try, see if anything different comes out of this one. And again, same approach, add the cubes, determine and establish the planes, and keep adding. Interestingly enough, in VR, you don't really know the direction. So one of the mechs I was working on earlier, I thought the front was the front and the back was the back, but I switched it around. And in this one, I might switch out the bottom and the top as well, but I think I stuck to what I initially started with. So here, I'm just trying to get some interesting shapes, and everything I've done so far is pretty standard to what I did before. So at some point, I have to start thinking about, okay, well, how am I going to make this one different? I don't want to do a bunch of the same ones. I do want to have a little bit of difference in each one. And I did, at the end, achieve differences in all 20 of the mechs. So that's kind of exactly the goal I had in mind. Here I'm using the move tool with a little bit of a twirl of the wrist to kind of get that back leg to look more like that of a grasshopper. And again, it's really hard to get away from the insectoid shapes, so I'm trying my best to do that. But also, sometimes adding some insectoid shapes adds a little bit of familiarity, so you kind of maybe want to use some of it, but not, heavy-handedly, maybe just lightly adding some insect aspects to it. Another thing that I determined with this one is I thought, okay, well, I had one hull that was more vertical. I thought I'd extend this one out a little bit horizontally and see if that would work. So maybe the people could be sitting in 4 rows inside instead of 2 or 3. So again, a lot of times when I'm designing, I'm thinking of those design choices. I'm always thinking about how things will work, whether they will work, maybe some scenarios. And when I do that, it makes whatever I'm designing a little bit more grounded in reality, and that always creates more believability as well as maybe some visual interest and familiarity that people tend to like. So I'm about halfway done with this one, and I've kind of gone pretty quickly in establishing these two things, which is the body and the legs. So the only thing that's going to be left here is that top shelf with the cannons on it, and pretty soon I will get started on that. So here I noticed that I have something very similar to what I had before, so I'm doing some interesting things with the cockpit here, where I'm just using the move tool to get maybe a little bit of a different shape, and I did achieve that, and I kind of like it. So I was happy that I made a little bit of a different design element than what was in the previous ones. And here I'm adding some arms. It's looking a little bit more praying mantis-like at this point, but that's okay because you know, maybe that is a look that will work. Whenever anything is designed, it's going to be designed based on existing elements, so you're going to at some point see some familiarity with things that you are used to seeing. All right, so here again, adding that top shelf, about 3/4 of the way done, and I'm always checking to make sure that I'm not going over the time allotted to these, which is, you know, I don't want to go over 15 minutes. Sometimes I go a little bit over, but I try to stay under if I can, just to make sure I'm not noodling too much and spending too much time, because at the end, if I have 20 of these done, then it gives me a good pool of ones to work from, and I can pull designs from each one, versus working on just one design and then eventually not liking it and having to start over, which is not a desirable thing to do. So here I'm picking out a couple of stamps, seeing if I can add any visual interest with that. But I'm feeling like I'm pretty much done here. I don't know if those added anything to it. So at this point, I'm probably deciding I should stop working on this one and move on to the next one. Okay, so making some last-minute gestural changes with the move tool, and we are almost done with this one. Here, I've started with one that's a purplish blue color. And this one's going to be different than some of the other ones because I'm going to be making a few different choices in this one, and you'll see that as it progresses along. So establishing the hull here, I decided that maybe I needed more room in the back, and doing that added interesting kind of curvy shape to the mech, which I decided to keep some of it and get rid of the others. So I decided to get rid of that shiny tip over there, because mostly mechs, specifically Japanese ones, tend to not use acute angles. So they don't use angles that are less than 90 degrees, and they tend to use obtuse angles. So I'm kind of staying true to that a little bit. I think it definitely does make a mech look more hard surfacey and more kind of official. And so that's why I got rid of those sharp tips there. And here I'm again using the move brush to get some sort of an interesting shape on this mech, spending a good amount of time on the hull here, and starting out with that shelf, adding that on, and hoping that I can still maintain that interesting look that I had on the top of the mech with the shelf. So here we go, getting that kind of planed out, or getting it to have the types of planes that I want it to have. And we're about a third of the way into this, and I'm still, as you can see, working on the hull. which is one of the more important parts because that's where the payload, the people are. So I should spend a good amount of time on that. And here we are, starting on the cannons, I think, at some point. Nope, I decided to go to the legs. So notice here with the legs I do something a little bit different, where I actually have some sort of an axis or a chassis or some sort of a kind of a mechanism that holds the legs outside of the hull of the mech. So I just decided to go with this option. And also another design choice I made with this one is I chose the middle portion of that leg to actually come forward, right, to the front, and then have the front legs kind of be in the middle. And so that was kind of going to be a little bit of a different look to it, kind of maybe like a gorilla or something. And of course the back ones are still going to be in the back. And I just wanted to try and see what that would look like. Again, having to do a bunch of these, you are compelled to try new things, and that's why I usually spend the time to do at least 10 or 20 thumbnails or iterations before I decide in a lineup which one is the one that I want to go with. So I don't usually spend a lot of time making sure these are level. I just will, again, all I need is just basically some compelling shapes and silhouettes that I can use later. So here we go. Here I'm starting to work on the guns, and notice I switched back to that flat cube with the cutout angle. Here I'm thinking, okay, well, what if this one had more sharper guns, maybe like a knife or a laser gun or something like that. But I eventually decide to not do that and include kind of the general, barrel of a cannon instead. All right, so what's nice about the cube also is that you can resize it very, very quickly to get kind of bigger and smaller shapes. So here I'm just adding a few more details, and I am done with this specific one. And on this one, again, using that bluish color, I'm trying some different things as well. I'm, again, spending some time on the hull. Did the hull very quickly on this one, and then said, okay, well, I think I did this right after the one that was before it, and I like the idea of having the legs be a little bit different. So I think with this one, what I'm going to do is I am going to use a different option for the legs. So I'm actually putting some of the legs emanating from the top of the mech instead of the bottom. And here we go. So I'm choosing this kind of design for this one, and this one's going to be pretty interesting because it's completely different than the other ones where I have arms emanating from the top, and I'm maybe straying a little bit away from the design choices here because I don't know if I've got enough room in the hull, and if I do, then basically this is going to be a pretty big mech. It's going to be gigantic. It's going to have gigantic legs, and I don't know if these would work in our current scenario. But again, once I'm done with these, I could keep them, and then in a future project, maybe I need some sort of a submarine type of mech or something like that. I can use that for this. So here I'm adding a little bit of area in the back, and I think I determined maybe this would be maybe double decker. There'll be some people sitting on the top part and then some people sitting on the bottom part of the hull. And I also thought that the cannons would be mounted on top as well. So again, trying out some different ideas. Don't have to do the exact same thing every single time. Again, I could end up using this one or using parts from it or not using it at all. But it definitely, the exercise helps me kind of maybe exercise my imagination and my design choices and maybe come up with a happy accident here or there that I can use. So here I'm about halfway done, and I pretty much have everything I want pretty much established. Then I start playing with some new options. So here I'm kind of noodling with the cannons, but then I decide to add more area in the back for the people to be in. So again, I always kind of consider what the scale of this will be. Always want to make sure that I have the hatch back there. So here I'm making room for it because the people need to get in and out of this thing pretty rapidly. So it does need to have that as a design requirement starting out. Building the room for the driver and the navigator, and spending some more time here in the back. And I think that eventually what I do here is I decide that the front parts look like arms. So maybe I decide to put in some legs behind. So I kind of forego some of the design choices I made by adding more legs in the back. So that I'm seeing these are looking more like arms in the front, so why not add more legs in the back? And here, for some reason, I'm adding really big bulky ones and then kind of shaving it off with the cube here. And possibly getting some new ideas that maybe I can create a different type of leg for the mechs in future versions of these types of designs if I am ever forced to do it. Sometimes I go back and forth just to find a state that I liked and then continue from there. And that was that one. So here I've got one that I did pretty quickly. This time I chose more like a kind of a lighter green, bluish green color. And again, a lot of the things I'm doing here are very similar to what I have done before. Establishing the cubes and then using the move tool to see if the way that the chatter is going to give me, the chatter is going to stretch to give me more interesting ideas of what to do. So yeah, I mean, pretty straightforward on this one. I don't know if I will be introducing anything new in it. Again, I tried to include, of the 20 that I did, I tried to include the 9 most interesting ones because I didn't want you to be watching the same thing over and over again. So in every one of these, there's some little thing that's a little bit different than the other ones. So here we go, just maybe establishing that area, getting the hatch done. And so far I've used nothing but the cube and the move tool on this one, and here I'm trying to add a little bit more bulk to the front leg, and about halfway done on this one. And as you can see, maybe the legs on this one are a little bit flatter. They're not as long, so maybe this would be more low to the ground and scurry along instead of move more elegantly. Even with spiders, there are different leg structures. So, for example, daddy long legs have longer appendages, and then there are the kind of the spiders that are more low to the ground, and they all move a little bit differently if you take the time to observe them. Here I'm choosing different stamps for the cannons and seeing if that works. And it seems like I've got an issue with mirroring there, so I've gone to a different shape and see if that one works any better. And here we go. I think I'm going to use these. I'm going to just basically plop them on one at a time. I was kind of thinking about what it would be like to have shorter guns on this one, but I think eventually I decided to make them longer. So here I'm using the line again to establish a kind of a straight tubular shape, and then choosing kind of more of a appropriate length. And yeah, this one's done as well. So for this last one, I'm choosing again that lighter greenish grayish color, and you can see here I don't have too much resolution on this one, so the edges look a little bit softer, and that also gives me a little bit of speed. And I think this one I left it for last because I did some really interesting things in it. And notice here that I'm always moving around the model. In VR, it's just so easy to do. And having this thing right in front of you in virtual reality makes a really big mental leap that you don't usually get sitting in front of a flat monitor. So I really like that about VR, is that it definitely puts your mind in a different space than you would normally be in if you were working in on a flat screen in front of you. All right, so for this one, I'm choosing the bottom to be more curvy. I think I also moved the light on this one a little bit. It was a little bit too bright, so now it's a little bit better. And determining the hatch there. And I'm about a quarter of the way done on this one. And for this one, I thought I would have more protected legs, so I thought I'd put some armor around the legs to protect them. So again, here a new design choice, a new way of working, just to see if this would be a better option for the final mech that we're going to have. And again, using that same principle here, I'm putting in the pill-shaped stamps, or the actual pill shape brush, and using that tip to establish the legs. So that way, if people are shooting at the mech, that it will have a little bit more defense on the legs themselves, and then also would be protecting the payload, which is in the middle. All right, so here we go. Kind of a newer, more interesting kind of design choice on this one. And I'm also choosing the legs to be a little bit lower to the ground. So this one's kind of more of a defensive choice. And the legs are perfectly are very big on this one, so it would be very robust. And it's always nice to, even with whatever you have, to choose the move tool to get even more designs, which is really nice to be able to do that. And if you change the size of the move brush, you get to affect a bigger area. And here I'm adding more of those plates, and seeing if that adds more visual interest. I thought I'd add some to the knees as well, because they would probably be weak points that people will try to shoot at. Maybe adding some more to the front so that it would close up if there was some sort of bullet or some sort of a ballistic item coming at it. It would kind of close up the front so that it would absorb that impact. All right, so about almost done with this one, and I just want to take these last few minutes to just point out how useful it is to do many of these at the same time. So I will do one of these in ZBrush as well. You don't really need to use VR to do it, although I find VR to be a really nice way of doing these, and it definitely gives you a new way of thinking, gives you a flexibility that you don't usually get. But if you don't have the luxury of having a VR set up, you can also do this type of stuff in ZBrush just as easily. Maybe get some better tools as well, because Medium is pretty limited in its tool set. Even though I'm using very few of them here, I'm getting some great results. But ZBrush, of course, has a wealth of other things that you can use as well, and has been around a lot longer. So, of course, there are some advantages to using ZBrush as well as Medium. So here, I'm almost done with this one, and hopefully you've enjoyed watching all 9 of these and seeing some of the approaches that I take to design my mechs.